Zylara stumbled through the crowded corridors of Station Kepler 9, her clicking sounds echoing off metal walls. The young Velian girl's pale blue skin shimmered faintly as she felt her way forward, fingers trailing along the cold surface. Each step was a calculation, a careful measurement of distance and danger. Click, click, click. The sound bounced back, painting a fuzzy picture in her mind of walls, corners, and moving obstacles. But living beings didn't always show up clearly in her echolocation. And some of them enjoyed that fact. Move it, blind freak. A voice growled above her. Before Zylara could react, something solid slammed into her shins. A KRYL trader had deliberately shoved a cargo crate into her path. Her feet tangled in the metal corners, and she went down hard. Pain shot through her knees as she hit the floor, her hands scraping against the rough grating. Laughter erupted around her. Cruel, mocking laughter that made her chest tighten. Did you see that? She walks like a drunk Slakovian. How does Station Command even let her walk around? She's a safety hazard. Zylara's fingers trembled as she tried to push herself up. Her bag had spilled open, scattering the data tablets she'd been carrying. She could hear them sliding across the floor, mixing with the footsteps of passers-by. Most aliens just walked around her, some stepping over her like she was trash. This wasn't new. This was every single day. Watch where you're going next time, defect, the KRYL sneered, his four eyes probably gleaming with satisfaction. Zylara couldn't see it, but she'd learned to recognize the tone. She was reaching blindly for her scattered tablets when she heard something different. Heavy boots running toward her. Fast. Hey. Back off. The voice was human. Rough but concerned. The sound of a metal toolbox hitting the ground echoed through the corridor, followed by those same boots stopping right beside her. Are you okay? Strong hands, calloused but gentle, took her arm and helped her up. The grip was steady, supportive. Not rough like the KRYL. Not hesitant like the other species who sometimes helped but acted like touching her might contaminate them. Zylara's clicking intensified as her panic spiked. My tablets. I got them. Hold on. The human's voice was calm. She heard him moving, collecting her things. Here. All 6 of them. Nothing broken. Thank you, Zylara whispered, clutching the tablets to her chest. Her heart was still racing. You got a problem? The human's voice had changed, harder now. Zylara realized he wasn't talking to her. The freak walked into my cargo, human. Not my fault she's defective, the KRYL replied. Defective? The human's anger was barely controlled. You shoved that crate right in her path. I saw the whole thing. Prove it. Who's the station going to believe? A respected trader or some random repair monkey? Silence. Tense, angry silence. Then the human spoke again, his voice lower, more dangerous. Touch her again, and we'll find out. Footsteps retreated. Multiple sets. The KRYL were leaving, probably still laughing. Sorry about that, the human said, his tone softening again as he turned back to her. I'm Jake. Jake Miller. Maintenance engineer, Sector 7. Zylara, she managed. Her voice was still shaking. I work in the archives. The archives? That's across the entire station from here. Jake sounded surprised. You walk this route every day? Yes. She didn't mention that every single day included some version of what just happened. Tripping, shoving, accidentally moving things into her path, stealing her navigation stick when she set it down. Alone? Zylara nodded. What choice did she have? The station didn't provide escorts for disabled workers. They barely acknowledged the problem existed. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then, which way are you headed? Archive entrance, level 4, section B. That's on my route, Jake said. It probably wasn't, but Zylara didn't correct him. Mind if I walk with you? She minded. Not because of him, but because kindness was rare, and rare things didn't last. Someone would mock him. His friends would question why he was helping the blind alien. He'd get tired of it and stop, and then she'd be back to walking alone, except now she'd remember what it felt like to have help. But she was so tired. So very tired of walking in fear. Okay, she whispered. They walked in silence for a while, Jake matching her slower pace without complaint. He warned her about upcoming turns, about groups of aliens blocking the path, about a maintenance bot that suddenly rolled across their route. You do this every day? Jake finally asked. The walking, I mean. Getting to work. Yes. And they? Yes. She knew what he was asking. Most days someone does something. Small things usually. Today was average. Jake stopped walking. Zylara stopped too, confused. That's not right, Jake said quietly. None of this is right. Zylara's throat tightened. She'd heard pity before, but this was different. This sounded like anger. Like someone actually cared that she suffered. It's just how things are, she said. I'm blind. In a station full of species that rely on sight. I'm slow. I'm in the way. You're a person, Jake interrupted firmly. And you deserve better than this. They reached the archive entrance too quickly. Zylara wished the walk had been longer. Same time tomorrow? Jake asked. I could walk with you. Both ways, if you want. Zylara's breath caught. Why would you do that? Jake's answer was simple, direct, and completely honest. Because it's right. For weeks, Jake timed his routes to accompany Zylara. Every morning at 700-hour station time, he'd be waiting at the residential block entrance with his toolbox and a thermos of coffee. Every evening at 1800 hours, he'd meet her at the archive exit to walk her home. At first, they walked in comfortable silence. But gradually, Zylara began to talk. I can map entire star systems through touch, she told him one morning, her fingers dancing in the air as she described her work. The data tablets have raised patterns. Each star cluster has a different texture, a different rhythm. I can feel the gravitational pulls, the orbital patterns. In my mind, I see them as music. As a song only I can hear. Jake listened, genuinely fascinated. That's incredible. Most people with sight couldn't do that. Most people with sight don't have to, Zylara said quietly. My people, the Valians, we communicate through bioluminescent patterns. Our skin lights up in colors and sequences. It's our language, our emotion, our entire way of connecting. She paused. I've never seen it. Not once. To them, I might as well not exist. Your own people did this? Left you here? Zylara's clicking intensified, a sign Jake had learned meant she was anxious. When I was 6 cycles old, my parents brought me to this station. They told me they'd be back after a trading run. That was 14 years ago. Jake's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. I survived. The station gave me the archive job. I have quarters. I have food. It's more than some have. But it wasn't enough. Jake could hear it in her voice. The loneliness. The years of being invisible. He found himself sharing things he rarely talked about. I had a daughter once, he said during one evening walk. Lily. She was 8 years old. Smart as a whip, always asking questions about how things worked. What happened? Zylara asked softly. Transport accident. 3 years ago. I was supposed to pick her up from school, but I got called to fix an emergency coolant leak. I figured it'd be fine, that her mom could get her instead. Jake's voice cracked. The transport malfunctioned. 12 people died. Lily was one of them. Zylara reached out, found his hand, and squeezed it. I wasn't there when she needed me, Jake said quietly. I won't make that mistake again. Not ever. They walked in silence after that, but something had shifted between them. They weren't just a human and an alien anymore. They were two broken people who'd found something rare in the cold metal corridors of Station Kepler 9. Friendship. But not everyone was happy about it. The KRYLL had noticed. Their favorite target was suddenly protected. Their daily entertainment was ruined. And they were getting angry. Jake started noticing them watching. Following. A group of 4 or 5 would linger near Zylara's residential block in the mornings, glaring as Jake and Zylara walked past. They'd mutter in their clicking language, a sound completely different from Zylara's echolocation. One evening, their leader made his move. Jake was heading to meet Zylara when 3 KRYLL blocked his path. The biggest one stepped forward, his 4 eyes fixed on Jake with undisguised hatred. Human, he growled. I am Vorak. We need to talk. I don't think we do. Jake tried to step around them, but they moved to block him again. You're ruining our entertainment, Vorak continued. The blind freak is our business. She's been our business for years. You've been here what, 2 months? You don't know how things work on this station. Jake's hands clenched into fists. Entertainment? You mean bullying someone who can't defend herself? We mean doing what we want with worthless cargo that should have been spaced years ago. Vorak's voice dripped with contempt. Station command doesn't care. The other species don't care. Why do you? Because I'm human, Jake said simply. And we don't leave people behind. Vorak laughed, a harsh clicking sound. How noble. How stupid. He leaned closer, his breath hot and rank. Back off, human. This is your only warning. Keep walking with the defect, and you'll regret it. Jake met his gaze without flinching. Find another hobby. For a moment, Vorak looked like he might attack. His mandibles clicked furiously, his forehands flexing. The other KRYLL tensed, ready to jump in. But Jake didn't back down. He'd faced worse than oversized crab aliens with attitude problems. Finally, Vorak stepped back. You'll regret this, human. Both of you will. They let him pass, but Jake could feel their eyes burning into his back as he walked away. He found Zylara waiting at the archive entrance, her head tilted in that way that meant she was listening intently. You're late, she said. Is everything okay? Jake forced a smile she couldn't see but might hear in his voice. Everything's fine. Just got held up. Ready to go. They walked home together, Jake watching the shadows more carefully than usual. He didn't tell Zylara about the confrontation. Didn't want to worry her. That was his first mistake. 2 days later, Zylara was walking through Corridor 7B during her lunch break. Jake had been called to an emergency repair in Sector 9. She was alone. She never heard the trap activate. One moment she was clicking her way forward, navigating the familiar route. The next moment, agony ripped through her entire body. It felt like fire and lightning combined, like every nerve was being shredded. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but convulse on the floor as the electromagnetic field tore through her. Somewhere in the distance, she heard laughter. KRYLL laughter. Then everything went black. Jake spent 72 hours without sleep, buried in classified research files. His quarters looked like a disaster zone. Empty coffee cups littered every surface. Data tablets stacked in precarious towers. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking from too much caffeine and too little rest. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The image of Zylara in that medical bay bed haunted him. Her pale blue skin covered in angry red burns. The way she'd flinched when anyone touched her. The station doctors had done what they could, but her body was damaged. Worse, her spirit was broken. Just let me die, she'd whispered that first night. I'm tired, Jake. So tired of this. He'd held her hand and made a promise. I'm going to fix this. I swear. Now he had to figure out how. Jake had started with simple solutions. Better navigation tools. Some kind of shield technology. Enhanced echolocation devices. But everything required Zylara to still navigate a station full of beings who wanted to hurt her. It wasn't enough to give her better tools. She needed something that KRYLL couldn't take away. She needed to see. That thought had sent him down a rabbit hole of medical research. Velian biology. Optical nerve regeneration. Cybernetic eye implants. But Velian physiology was too different from most species. Their optical systems were unique, evolved for processing bioluminescent communication at speeds other species couldn't match. Standard prosthetics wouldn't work. Cloned organs wouldn't take. Surgery couldn't fix nerves that had never developed in the first place. Jake was about to give up when he found it, buried deep in Earth's military research database. A file marked classified, level 7 access only. Optical neural interface technology. His hands trembled as he read through the specifications. The ONI system had been developed for fighter pilots, allowing them to process visual data directly from their ship's sensors into their brain. No screens, no delays. Pure thought-to-visual translation. But the research had gone further. In theory, the technology could map one person's visual cortex and transfer that neural template to another person. It had never been tested. The ethical implications alone had shut down the project. Jake read the file 3 times. Then a 4th. Each time, his heart beat faster. This could work. This could actually work. But there was a catch. There was always a catch. The ONI required a living donor. Someone had to provide the neural template, the basic blueprint of how a human brain processed visual information. And because Velian neurology was so different, the donor would need to maintain a connection during the initial calibration period. Hours, maybe days, of neural bridging. The risks were listed in cold, clinical language. Donor could experience permanent vision loss. Neural damage. Seizures. Psychological fracturing. Death. Jake stared at those words for a long time. Then he opened a communication channel. Dr. Amy Walsh's face appeared on the screen. She looked older than Jake remembered, her blonde hair now streaked with gray. They'd worked together 5 years ago on a station defense project before Jake had requested a transfer to get away from painful memories. Jake Miller? Amy blinked in surprise. It's 3 in the morning station time. What's wrong? I need your help. Jake's voice was rough from lack of sleep. The ONI project. I know it was shut down, but I need the equipment. And I need you to run the procedure. Amy's expression shifted from surprise to concerned. Jake, that project was terminated for good reasons. The technology isn't ready for. I'm not asking if it's ready. I'm asking if it's possible. Possible? Amy leaned back, studying him through the screen. Theoretically, yes. But Jake, the risks are enormous. We're talking about human-to-human transfer, which we've never successfully tested. You're talking about something else entirely, aren't you? Human to alien? Jake nodded. That's insane. The biological incompatibility alone could kill the recipient. The neural patterns wouldn't match. The visual processing centers are completely different. And the donor? Amy's voice softened. Jake, who's the donor? Me. Absolutely not. Amy stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. Jake, you could lose everything. Your vision, your cognitive function, your life. For what? A procedure that has maybe a 30% chance of success. For someone who deserves better than the life she's been given, Jake said quietly. For someone who's been abandoned by her own species, tortured by others, and told every single day that she's worthless. For someone who asked me to let her die because she couldn't see any other option. Amy was silent for a long moment. Tell me about her, she finally said. So Jake did. He told Amy about Zylara. About the daily harassment, the trap in Corridor 7B, the burns that covered her body. About a brilliant mind trapped in darkness, cataloging star systems she'd never seen. About a girl abandoned at 6 years old who'd somehow survived 14 years alone. When he finished, Amy was wiping her eyes. The donor would need to provide their own visual cortex mapping as the template, she said slowly. Your neural patterns would be extracted, translated into a format compatible with Velian neurology, then transmitted through a neural bridge. You'd be blind during the process. And afterward. She took a breath. Your vision would be permanently compromised. Reduced color perception, limited depth awareness, possible blind spots. You'd never see the same way again. I don't care. Jake. Amy, please. Jake's voice cracked. I wasn't there when my daughter needed me. I made a choice to fix a coolant leak instead of picking her up from school, and she died. I've lived with that for 3 years. Every single day, I wake up knowing I failed her. He stood up, facing the screen directly. I won't fail Zylara. I can't. If there's even a chance this works, I have to try. Amy studied him for a long time. Then she sighed. I'll need 2 weeks to modify the equipment. And Jake? If this goes wrong, if she dies or you die or both of you end up brain damaged, I'll never forgive you for making me do this. Jake smiled grimly. Get in line. Dr. Amy Walsh arrived in secret 2 weeks later, her equipment hidden inside maintenance containers labeled coolant recyclers and air filter replacements. Jake had moved everything to his personal quarters after discovering what the KRYLL had done. They'd sabotaged the medical bay, cut power lines, corrupted the backup systems, even planted a small explosive device in the equipment storage. Station security had called it vandalism and filed a report that would go nowhere. Jake had expected it. The KRYLL weren't going to let this happen without a fight. This is your last chance to back out, Amy said as she assembled the neural interface equipment in Jake's cramped living space. 2 medical tables, barely fitting in the room. Cables and monitoring devices covering every available surface. Once we start, there's no stopping. The neural mapping process can't be interrupted or you'll both suffer permanent brain damage. Jake looked at Zylara, sitting quietly on his couch. Her burns had healed but left scars across her arms and legs. She hadn't left her quarters in 2 weeks except to come here tonight. Zylara? Jake asked. You sure about this? She turned toward his voice, her sightless eyes finding him with uncanny accuracy. I should be asking you that. You're the one giving up everything. I'm not giving up anything that matters, Jake said firmly. Not compared to what you'll gain. Amy cleared her throat. I need to explain exactly what's going to happen. Jake, you'll be conscious for the first phase while I map your visual cortex. Every memory of sight, every neural pathway, every connection that makes vision possible. It's going to hurt. A lot. I've had worse. No, you haven't, Amy said bluntly. After mapping, we established the neural bridge between you and Zylara. You'll experience her darkness while she experiences your light. For approximately 16 hours, maybe longer, you'll both be locked in this state. If either of you panics, if either of you tries to break the connection, you could both die. Zylara's hands trembled. Maybe this is too dangerous. Maybe we shouldn't. We're doing this, Jake interrupted. Amy, start the procedure. The procedure began at midnight station time. Jake lay on one table, Zylara on another, barely 3 feet apart. Amy attached neural sensors to both their heads, dozens of tiny contacts that would read and transmit brain signals. Then came the cables, thick bundles of fiber optics that would carry information between them. Starting neural mapping, Amy announced. Jake, this is going to feel strange. Strange was an understatement. Jake felt something probe his mind, like invisible fingers sorting through his memories. Every sunset he'd ever seen. Every face he'd ever loved. The blue of Earth's oceans, the green of summer grass, the silver white of stars against black space. His daughter's smile. His wife's eyes. Colors and shapes and depth and distance, all being catalogued and copied. The pain started slowly, then built to a crescendo. It felt like his brain was being peeled apart layer by layer. Jake gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. Hang on, Amy's voice seemed distant. Almost through phase 1. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Jake couldn't tell anymore. Neural map complete, Amy finally said. Beginning translation protocol. Converting human visual processing to Velian-compatible format. Jake heard Zylara gasp. I feel something. Like pressure in my head. That's normal. Jake, I'm establishing the bridge now. Ready? Jake managed a nod. The world went black. Not the black of closing your eyes. Not the black of a dark room. This was absolute, total absence of light. This was what Zylara had experienced every moment of her entire life. Jake wanted to scream. Jake. Stay calm. Amy's voice cut through the darkness. Your visual cortex is temporarily disconnected. This is normal. Breathe. He breathed. In and out. Fighting panic. Then he heard Zylara scream. Too bright. It's too much. I can't. Zylara, listen to me, Amy's voice was firm. Your brain has never processed visual information before. It's overwhelming, I know. But you need to stay calm. Let the neural bridge stabilize. For 16 agonizing hours, Jake floated in absolute darkness while Zylara's mind tried to make sense of the flood of visual information pouring into her consciousness. He could feel her through the connection. Her terror, her confusion, her wonder. Colors she had no names for. Shapes that made no sense. Depth perception that seemed impossible. Light and shadow dancing in patterns her brain desperately tried to interpret. Outside Jake's quarters, something was happening. He could hear raised voices. Pounding on the door. Open up, human. The KRYLL. They'd found out. We know what you're doing. Stop this abomination. More voices joined them. Angry clicks and growls. Then different voices. Human voices. You're not getting through. That was Tom Peterson, another maintenance engineer. Back off. This is none of your concern. Like hell it isn't, another human answered. Lisa Chen from Hydroponics. One of our own is in there doing something incredible. You think we're going to let you stop it? The pounding continued but got no closer. The humans were holding the line. Inside, Amy worked frantically at her controls. Neural bridge stabilizing. Zylara, can you hear me? Try to open your eyes. Jake felt it through their connection. Zylara's consciousness reaching toward the light, trying to grasp what sight actually meant. I see. Zylara whispered. I see shapes. Colors. Amy, your skin is dark like rich soil. Your eyes are kind. And Jake. Jake couldn't see, but he felt Zylara's attention turn toward him. Jake, you're beautiful. Amy's hands flew across the controls. Final transfer phase. This is it. Jake, on the count of 3, I'm going to sever the bridge and lock Zylara's new neural pathways in place. You'll regain vision, but it will be compromised. Are you ready? Do it, Jake managed. 3, 2, 1. Light exploded back into Jake's mind. But it was different. Colors were muted, washed out. His depth perception was gone. Everything looked flat, like a poorly focused photograph. But he could see Zylara sitting up on her table, tears streaming down her face, her eyes wide and focused and seeing for the very first time. It worked, Amy breathed. It actually worked. 3 months later, Zylara stood before the station council in the main assembly hall. Jake sat in the back row, watching her address the gathered representatives from 40 different species. His vision was compromised now, colors washed out to pale shadows of what they once were. Everything looked flat, like he was viewing the world through foggy glass. But he could still see Zylara standing tall at that podium, and that was enough. For 14 years, I walked these corridors in darkness, Zylara said, her voice steady and clear. I was harassed, attacked, and told daily that I was worthless. That I was defective. That I didn't deserve to exist. The council chambers were silent. Even the usually chattering delegates sat still. But one human showed me something different. He showed me that my worth wasn't determined by my disabilities. That compassion isn't weakness. That sacrifice for another being isn't foolishness, it's the highest form of strength. Zylara's hands moved as she spoke, and suddenly her skin began to glow. Bioluminescent patterns rippled across her arms in waves of blue and gold. For the first time in her life, she could see her own species' language. She could finally speak as the Valians spoke. The 3 Valian delegates in the chamber gasped. One of them stood, his own skin lighting up in response. A conversation in light, witnessed by dozens of species who'd never seen a Valian communicate with another. Jake felt his chest tighten with emotion. She was magnificent. I propose sweeping accessibility reforms for Station Kepler 9, Zylara continued. Audio navigation systems. Tactile pathways. Translation devices for species who communicate differently. And most importantly, strict penalties for harassment of disabled individuals. The KRYLL delegate stood abruptly. This is absurd. The cost alone will be covered by the fines collected from species who violate anti-discrimination laws, Zylara interrupted smoothly. Starting with the KRYLL Trading Consortium, which owes approximately 200,000 credits in penalties for documented harassment over the past 3 years. Chaos erupted. The KRYLL delegates shouted protests. But other species were nodding, murmuring agreement. The human delegates sat with satisfied smiles. In the end, the reforms passed by a significant margin. Zylara was promoted to chief archivist with a salary increase of 300%. And the KRYLL Trading Consortium was hit with sanctions that would take years to pay off. But that was only the beginning. News of Jake's sacrifice spread beyond Station Kepler 9. First to other human colonies, then to allied species, and eventually across the entire galactic network. The story was simple but powerful. A human maintenance worker had permanently damaged his own vision to give sight to an alien girl who couldn't repay him. The concept baffled many species. Why would he destroy himself for someone outside his family group? Asked the insectoid Tresh. What benefit did he gain? Questioned the logical Androrians. This behavior makes no economic sense, declared the merchant Quillans. But it inspired something else. Something new. Human ambassadors began pushing for what they called compassion protocols and interspecies agreements. The idea that the strong had a responsibility to protect the weak, regardless of species or benefit. That dignity was a right, not a privilege earned through productivity. Other species started paying attention to their disabled populations. Accessibility standards were adopted on 12 major stations within the first month. Anti-discrimination laws spread to over 40 worlds. The Velian government, shamed by the fact that a human had shown more honor than they had, extended citizenship to Zylara. They offered to pay for Jake's medical care for life. They erected a monument on their homeworld, a statue of a human and a Velian standing together, hands clasped. The inscription read, "To Jake Miller, who taught us that sight without compassion is blindness." Jake tried to refuse the honors. He didn't want statues or celebrations. But Amy convinced him otherwise. "Let them honor you," she said. "Not for your ego, but because it spreads the message. Every species that hears this story, every disabled being who sees that monument, they'll know that things can change." So Jake accepted. He gave interviews, attended ceremonies, shook hands with ambassadors. But his favorite moments were still the simple ones. Like now, 4 months after the procedure, walking with Zylara through the station corridors at sunset. The viewports showed the local star dipping below the horizon of a nearby planet, painting the sky in colors Jake could barely perceive anymore. But Zylara could see it. She stopped at every viewport, drinking in the sight. Tell me what you see, Jake said. Orange and pink and purple, Zylara breathed. The clouds look like they're on fire. The planet's oceans are reflecting the light, turning everything gold. She turned to him, her eyes bright. How do you describe beauty, Jake? How do you put this into words? Jake smiled. You just did. They continued walking, Zylara occasionally narrating what she saw for Jake's benefit. Other beings in the corridor stepped aside respectfully now. Some nodded to them. A few even smiled. The neural bridge between them had never fully severed. Sometimes Jake caught glimpses of what Zylara was seeing, flashes of color more vibrant than anything his damaged eyes could perceive. And Zylara sometimes felt his emotions, his quiet satisfaction, his peace with the choice he'd made. Do you regret it? Zylara asked suddenly. Giving up your vision for me? Jake didn't hesitate. Not for a second. But you loved seeing. You told me about Earth's oceans, the forests, the mountains. You'll never see them clearly again. No, Jake agreed. But you will. And every time you see something beautiful and share it with me through our connection, I see it too. Different than before, but maybe better. Because I'm seeing it through the eyes of someone experiencing it for the first time. Zylara took his hand, squeezing gently. Thank you, Jake. For everything. They reached Zylara's quarters, where she now lived in a better section of the station with larger rooms and an actual window. Same time tomorrow? Jake asked. Always, Zylara promised. As Jake walked back to his own quarters, he thought about his daughter Lily. About the choice he'd made 3 years ago that he couldn't take back. About the guilt he'd carried every day since. But he'd made a different choice with Zylara. And maybe that didn't erase the past, but it gave him something he thought he'd lost forever. Purpose. Redemption. Hope. And the knowledge that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons or ships that could cross the stars. It was the simple, radical act of caring about someone else more than yourself. That was the gift humans gave the galaxy. That was what changed everything.